I never thought the moment that destroyed my family would begin with a vacuum cleaner. My daughter-in-law stood in the hallway filming me while I scrubbed the floors of the house I spent 26 years paying for. Then she posted the video online with the caption, "Our live-in housekeeper works for food." But that wasn't the part that broke me. The part that broke me was opening the comments and seeing my own son laughing along with everyone else. What happened after that shocked even me, because within a few weeks, the same people who treated me like unpaid staff will deeply regret everything. And by the end of this story, you'll understand something most people learn far too late. The fastest way to destroy a good mother is to convince yourself she'll tolerate anything. Before we get into the story itself, hit like and tell me, have you ever been the one your own children laughed at and treated in a humiliating way? And what did you do in that situation? My name is Helen, and I'm 52 years old. Have you ever realized in one terrible second that the people you sacrificed everything for no longer see you as family? That moment came for me with a vacuum cleaner in my hands. Sunday morning sunlight spilled across the hardwood floors while I moved slowly through the hallway, cleaning the same house I spent 26 years paying for as a school art teacher. The smell of lemon polish lingered in the air, pot roast simmered in the kitchen. Upstairs, Connor and his wife Leela were laughing about something. I remember thinking how nice it was to hear my son laugh. Then I heard Leela say, "Move a little slower, Ellen. The lighting's better this way." I looked up. She was filming me, phone raised, camera pointed directly at my face while I vacuumed around her shoes. At first, I smiled awkwardly. Honestly, I thought she was filming a home video for the family album. Then she laughed and said loudly into the camera, "Our live-in housekeeper lives with us and cleans in exchange for meals." She immediately published the video on Reels and YouTube Shorts. Connor burst out laughing from the kitchen. Oh yeah, that's her work. A laughing emoji appeared on his phone screen seconds later as he commented under the upload before it even finished posting. Something inside my chest physically hurt. Not anger, not embarrassment, something deeper. The kind of pain that comes when love suddenly feels one-sided. Leela kept recording while I stood there frozen beside the vacuum cord. "You guys, look at her face," she snorted. "She's actually offended." I swallowed hard and turned the vacuum off. Connor finally looked up at me. For one tiny second, I waited for him to say, "Leela, enough." He didn't. Instead, he shrugged casually. "Mom, relax. It's just a joke." Just a joke. Funny how humiliation is always a joke when you're not the one being humiliated. An hour later, alone in my bedroom, I opened Instagram with trembling fingers. The reel already had thousands of views. Strangers were laughing at me. One comment read, "Best deal ever, free Maid included." Another said, "She looks too old to complain." Then I saw Connor reply with 3 crying, laughing emojis. That broke me. Not because strangers mocked me, because my son joined them. I sat there staring at the screen through blurry eyes, remembering the nights I worked extra tutoring jobs to buy his winter coats, the birthdays I skipped for myself so he could have better gifts, the years I spent protecting him from every disappointment life threw at him. And somehow, I had raised a man who could publicly humiliate his own mother for entertainment. That night, while they laughed upstairs watching television, I quietly packed a small overnight bag. Neither of them noticed me leave. But before sunrise the next morning, I canceled the debit card connected to my bank account and which I gave them so they could buy the food they needed. And I still remember the exact thought that crossed my mind when I pressed the button. If they wanted a maid, they were about to learn how expensive one really is. The first call came at 8:12 in the morning. I was sitting in a small hotel on the outskirts of town, drinking coffee, watching cold fog drift over the trees. For the first time in years, nobody was demanding anything from me. Then my phone started vibrating across the table. Lila calling. I let it ring. A second later, another notification flashed. Why is my card declining? Then another. I'm stuck at the register, Ellen. I stared at the messages for a long moment before calmly taking another sip of coffee. The debit card connected to my account, the one I'd given them for groceries and emergencies, stopped working. Canceled permanently. And deep down, they both knew exactly why. By noon, I drove back home. The second I stepped through the front door, Lila stormed into the hallway, still wearing sunglasses on top of her head, fury radiating from her face. "You embarrassed me," she snapped. "People were standing behind me while my card kept getting declined." I slowly hung my coat on the rack. "That sounds uncomfortable," I answered quietly. Her mouth actually fell open. Connor appeared from the kitchen looking irritated and tired. "Mom, seriously? You canceled it over one stupid video?" I looked at him carefully. "One stupid video?" I repeated softly. "Connor, your wife filmed me cleaning my own house and called me your maid in front of thousands of people, and you laughed." For 1 second, guilt flickered across his face. Then Lila jumped in immediately. "Oh my God, here we go again. It was content." Content. That word hit me harder than the video itself. To her, my humiliation wasn't personal. It was entertainment. I walked past them into the laundry room. 3 overflowing baskets sat exactly where they'd left them for me. Usually, by Wednesday morning, every sock and towel would already be washed, folded, and stacked upstairs. Not this time. Connor noticed where I was looking. "So you're not doing laundry now?" I turned toward him calmly. "I'm not your servant anymore." The silence that followed was deafening. That evening, I cooked grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, and fresh rice for one person. The smell filled the kitchen while Connor opened cabinets searching for food. "Connor, Mom, you didn't make enough?" "No," I said without looking up. "I made exactly enough." Lila scoffed loudly. "This is insane." But here's the truth. They still didn't understand. The real shock wasn't that I stopped serving them. The real shock was realizing how much they expected me to. Later that night, I carried my dinner plate upstairs and quietly locked my bedroom door for the first time in my entire life. And standing there with the key still in my hand, I realized something that nearly brought me to tears. I finally felt safe inside my own house again. You don't notice how much of your life people have taken from you until you start taking it back. The war for my house began in the garage. Saturday morning, I stood in front of towers of Connor and Lila's boxes stacked wall to wall. Old gym equipment, unopened shopping bags, winter tires, broken furniture they kept meaning to sell. My car had spent 11 months parked outside in rain, snow, and heat, while their junk lived comfortably indoors. That morning, I had enough. I rolled up the garage door and dragged the first box outside, then another, then another. 3 exhausting hours later, every single item sat neatly under the covered backyard carport, protected from weather, but no longer invading my space. Then I did something that nearly made me emotional. I parked my car back inside my own garage. The automatic door closed behind me with a soft mechanical hum, and I actually stood there smiling like an idiot, because for the first time in a year, something in this house belonged to me again. Connor came home first. The second he saw the empty garage, his face changed. "Mom, where's our stuff?" "Our?" I asked quietly. He stared at me. "You moved everything outside?" "Yes." "You had no right." That sentence almost made me laugh. No right. In my own home. Before I could answer, Leela stormed up the driveway carrying iced coffee and shopping bags. The moment she saw her exercise bike under the carport, she exploded. "Are you serious right now?" Neighbors turned their heads. I stayed calm. I said you were staying temporarily, I answered. Temporary people don't take over permanent space. Her face reddened instantly. Connor rubbed both hands over his face. Mom, can't we just talk about this normally? I looked directly at him. We could have talked normally before you both turned me into internet comedy. Silence. Heavy silence. That night, Leela started posting passive-aggressive quotes online. Toxic parents always use money to control you. Some people confuse kindness with ownership. I saw every post and ignored every one. That drove her crazy, because cruel people expect reactions, but I was done feeding the fire. The next morning, another delivery arrived at the house, a compact silver refrigerator. Leela frowned immediately. What's that for? My groceries, I answered calmly. Connor blinked. You're hiding food now? No, I said softly. I'm protecting my peace. The following evening, they opened the kitchen refrigerator and froze. Almost empty. No fresh fruit, no expensive coffee, no prepared meals, only their cheap frozen food remained. Mom, Connor said slowly, you didn't buy groceries? I looked him straight in the eye. You wanted separate lives, I answered. I'm simply respecting that. And judging by the panic on their faces, for the first time they were beginning to realize this wasn't temporary anymore. The moment Leela invited her parents to stay in my house without asking me, I knew the final line had been crossed. Friday evening, I heard tires crunch across the driveway and looked through the living room curtains. 2 suitcases, Leela's parents, smiling, walking toward my front door like they were arriving at a hotel. Leela swung the door open dramatically. Mom, Dad, come in. You'll stay in the guest room. The guest room. My chest tightened instantly. That room no longer existed. 3 days earlier, I had transformed it into my private art studio, the first space in years that felt entirely mine again. Leela marched confidently down the hallway and grabbed the handle. Then froze. Locked. She rattled it harder. Ellen, why is this door locked? I walked into the hallway calmly, wiping paint from my hands with a cloth. It's my studio now. The silence that followed felt dangerous. Her mother looked uncomfortable immediately. Her father avoided eye contact. Connor looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him alive. Leela stared at me in disbelief. You're joking. No, my parents are staying here all weekend. You should have asked first. Her face turned bright red. So where are they supposed to sleep? I looked directly at Connor. You both have a large upstairs bedroom, I answered quietly. An air mattress should fit fine. The explosion came instantly. This is insane, Lila shouted. You're humiliating us in front of my parents. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. No, Lila, humiliation was filming me on my knees scrubbing floors while strangers laughed at me online. Connor finally spoke. Mom, please. That almost broke me because I heard shame in his voice for the first time, real shame, but it was too late for softness now. Monday morning, I handed him a white envelope at the kitchen table. He opened it slowly. Then his face went pale. A rental agreement? He whispered. Yes. Mom, you're charging us rent? I held his gaze steadily. No, I'm giving 2 adults the chance to contribute to the home they live in. Lila snatched the papers from his hands. This is emotional blackmail. No, I answered calmly. This is accountability. The room went completely silent. Then Connor quietly asked the question that shattered my heart. What happened to you? I looked at my son for a very long time before answering. I finally remembered this was my house too. 3 days later, they signed the contract, but the tension inside those walls, it only got worse because now they understood something terrifying. I was no longer asking to be respected. I was requiring it. 5 months later, the upstairs was finally silent. No slammed cabinets, no shoes abandoned in the hallway, no coffee cups left beside my furniture like I was supposed to clean up after invisible children. Just silence. And honestly, it sounded beautiful. The moving truck sat outside while Connor carried the last box down the stairs. He looked exhausted, older somehow. Lila barely spoke to me the entire morning. Her jaw stayed tight, her eyes cold. But right before stepping out the front door, she stopped and turned toward me. "You really chose a house over your own family." The accusation hung in the air. For a second, the old version of me almost apologized, the woman who spent years keeping peace by sacrificing herself. But she was gone now. I looked directly at Lila and answered quietly. "No, I chose self-respect over being treated like staff." Her expression hardened instantly. She walked out without another word. Connor stayed behind. That surprised me. He stood awkwardly near the staircase, turning his car keys over nervously in his hand before finally whispering, "Mom, I should have defended you." Those 6 words hit harder than every insult, because deep down, that was the wound that never stopped bleeding. Not the video, not the comments, my son watching it happen and laughing too. I felt tears sting my eyes, but I kept my voice steady. "You were supposed to." Connor lowered his head. "I know." Then, for the first time in years, he hugged me without asking for money, help, or forgiveness. Just a hug. After they drove away, I locked the front door slowly and stood there with my hand resting on the key. The house smelled of coffee and fresh paint. My paintbrushes waited inside the studio. My car sat safely in the garage again. And as sunlight poured through the living room window, one final thought settled deep in my chest. Respect isn't something you beg for in your own home. Sometimes it's the lock on the door.
Friends, what do you think of this story? Write your opinion in the comments. Would you like more stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss any videos. See you tomorrow.